What's up, everybody? Thralls Melody here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you. And one that I had on my radar just because, well, I saw who all was in it, and I was really kind of curious as to what this all would sound like. I really enjoyed the singles, and this turned out to be like a really interesting listen overall.
I didn't know really what to expect getting into it, and then I looked at it today and saw who all was in the band and went, okay.
All right.
Okay, I'm sold.
So we are going to go over the debut full-length from End Rain. The Way of All Flesh is Decay. Take that, Gojira.
Yeah.
This comes out on the 14th of July on Relapse Records. This band formed in 2021 in Baltimore, Maryland. And again, this is their debut album. And, well, this is technically a supergroup, and especially when I read off the list of people involved, because literally everyone in here is in some, like, cool band that I definitely listened to before and had me kind of roped in. On vocals, we have Mike Score of All Out War. I've been a longtime fan of that band. One of the guitarists on here is Dominic Romeo, formerly of Pulling Teeth and formerly of Integrity. And on bass, we have Art Laguerre, maybe? I don't know.
Laguerre,
probably Laguerre. Anyway, he was in Bloodlet for a while, which was a really interesting sludge metal hardcore act that was on Victory Records a while ago.
And then we have Sebastian Phillips on guitar from Exhumed and Noisem. I've seen him in Exhumed. Shreds fucking balls. And then Adam Jarvis on drums, most notably from Pig Destroyer and Misery Index.
Vicious drummer.
Vicious. Yeah. Vicious. Insane. Beats the piss out of the drums.
So, yeah, seeing that lineup, I was like, all right, there's a lot of stuff that is centered on hardcore. There's a lot of stuff that is centered on, like really brutal, death metal, too. Yeah. So what is this going to sound like? And it's really an interesting mix, and it's kind of hard to describe. At its core, it is definitely more hardcore. It really is.
Yes.
It has all the hardcore grooves, the riffs. There's lots of just pummeling, just punch you in the face fucking music. But there's a lot more going on when you actually get into this album. Right away with the opening track, Desolate Fog, you have this very atmospheric, creepy intro with
wind.
Yeah, I don't know. Wind really close to a microphone. It sounds kind of staticky, and then you have someone muttering something possibly in Latin. I don't know what he's saying, but it's creepy. But that leads into doom metal harmonies. It starts off very slow, very plotting. It's just very gross and murky and kind of sinister and evil, which is not necessarily the mood I expect from hardcore at all.
Yeah, because it's sinister and evil almost in a way that you would find in death metal or even death doom. It's that kind of level of just unsettling noise.
And then it breaks right into D beats and stomps. You hear Mike Score just fucking screaming his guts out. If you are familiar with All Out War, you know that dude gives his all on every fucking album. I don't know how his throat has survived all these years, because he is just screaming. It's very just ranty and furious. Oh, yeah. And then behind it you have this good mix of hardcore riffs and kind of punkier moments and straight up thrash metal machine gun chugs. It's absolutely fucking vicious.
And then you get a Shreddy Lead in there, which typically is not found in hardcore at all. Obviously things like crossover thrash and whatnot, classic heavy metal, you'd find leads, but not typically in hardcore, and that was a nice little surprise. And then a nasty hardcore breakdown.
Oh, it's absolutely vicious. But some of that is kind of what I expected on here, and definitely got, again, that hardcore attitude, the viciousness, that in-your-face sort of energy. It is on every track, but it's what they do kind of in between those moments. Yeah. As you go on, you hear, death metal riffs mixed with, punk riffs, classic heavy metal harmonies and gallops. I was not expecting that at all, because this was described as crossover thrash / hardcore / metalcore with a hint of death metal in it, and all of that is kind of right, but again, there's a lot more going on here.
Yeah, in the song When Death Comes Crawling, that's where you get really noticeable Iron Maiden nods. Classic heavy metal harmonies. There's leads all over the place. The lead work in this record is phenomenal. I don't think you could have done it much better, especially for what you have to work with in the time frame of which you have to work with it.
I would think it was Sebastian doing a lot of that, because he does ripping leads in Exhumed. He's a really, really solid guitarist.
Yes.
But I think some of this is traded off, too, so I think Dominic is also in on there as well. But I like this song in particular because of the transitions, and how they transition between these styles, I think, is absolutely awesome because it's almost seamless, because you're kind of stuck in this like good D beat sort of groove or a gallop, and then you notice the riff has changed, at least kind of. Like, for example, it opens up with these heavy metal harmonies. It gets in that kind of Iron Maiden kind of trooper-esque gallop, and then instantly the riffs kind of shift more towards punk, but that D beat stays the same, and then all of a sudden we have like flat out death metal tremolo riffs, but that beat kind of stays the same, and regardless of what's going on, Mike sounds as vicious as possible. And I don't know, it's this sort of cool transitional thing that they do. Like, they kind of, again, keep it on one beat for the most part, but it's the riffs that have a lot of fun exploring different territory.
Yeah, like Jarvis keeps the drum beat in the pocket. He really doesn't venture outside of that much, which for this guy, if you've ever heard this guy play, you know that he's not the most reserved man in the world on the drums. It's usually blast beats and furious fucking beat the shit out of the drums. But in this case, he keeps most every song really tight in the pocket and lets the guitars do all the transitioning. And it's really cool because it really is seamless. Like, oftentimes you don't notice really what's happened until after it's happened. Normally in most songs when they transition, there's a little lead up to it, or a little break, or a little turnover that you know, alludes to what's coming. And in this case, it just happens. So it's weird.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also the thing that kind of keeps this album flowing very seamlessly. Like, the songs are very much one after the other. There are some breaks for atmosphere, and generally the atmosphere is very creepy and unsettling.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bit more spoken word that pops up on here, and they're not saying pleasant things, I'm pretty sure of that, whether it's in English or in Latin. I'm not entirely sure if they're speaking Latin in that first track, but I don't know. You say something in a gruff voice with all sorts of distortion on it. It's like, yeah, you know, that's, you could be telling me a fucking recipe for cupcakes. And like, no, that sounds creepy.
Yeah, like the end of Chaos Masked as Order. I'm not sure what he's saying there, but it's done during a very violent breakdown, and it just adds to the overall kind of like, what the fuck, this is eerie.
Yeah. And breakdowns are an interesting thing on here too, where with the first couple of tracks, Chaos Masked Order and Desolate Fog, there are two massive hardcore breakdowns on there. I mean, like pure slowdown, stank face, punch your best friend next to you in the pit, like that kind of energy. But breakdowns like that are actually kind of rare on here.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you'd think that with the first couple songs, Desolate Fog, Chaos Marked Disorder, and Divine Abysmal End, those songs are all really almost one after the other, and they all contain breakdowns, so you think like, okay, this record's going to be full of nasty breakdowns, and it's not. Really, those are most notably, at least in my opinion, the only couple songs in which breakdowns really appear.
Yeah, or at least in the hardcore sense, like you get some that are a little bit more like along the lines of like crossover thrash, or, well, the other thing I wasn't expecting was like flat out doom metal, like, you know, The Hunger and Giving Life to Tragedy. Both of those are just bleak sounding songs. While The Hunger is a little bit more up-tempo, there's like this kind of creepy dissonant riff that kind of carries it, and it's just kind of cold and icy. I mean, it definitely gets more aggressive as it goes on, but it's sort of like a different vibe for something you would expect to be more of a hardcore act. And Giving Life to Tragedy is almost classic doom metal with hardcore vocals.
Yes, because it has doom elements, but it also has a really solid classic heavy metal vibe. And you'll hear it in the riffs, and you'll hear it in the leads, and just the overall melodies of everything, because it's got kind of like an epic, kind of triumphant classic heavy metal sound with having the darkness of doom.
And it does it really well. In fact, like, melody was something I really wasn't like expecting on here. You know, hardcore, yeah, it has its melodies. It's generally, you know, like, yeah, stand up to whoever fucking with you, and it's yeah, you know, that sort of thing. Like, you know, get in a fight sort of energy, that sort of triumphant. Hopefully you win that fight. But this has melodies that are, again, more accustomed to doom metal and heavy metal, and that sort of triumphant, almost epic vibe, contrasted by like the violent thrash sections, and again, Mike's rabid fucking vocals. And on that song, you have Dwid Hellion from Integrity belching hellfire with these low groans.
Yeah.
That creepy last gasp at the end where, yeah, like someone's death rattle at the end. It's just unsettling. But again, like this atmosphere and this blend of styles it really kind of opened this album up a lot more. And actually, as this album kept going, I was like, man, there's so much more to this.
Well, yeah, and they do it so often. So, like, once again, you'd think first couple songs, all right, hardcore. But when it really opens up, there's thrash, like, all the time. There's D-beats all the time. There's hardcore gallops and stomps. And the Doom thing, too. Serpent Messiah.
Oh.
Dude, that song is nasty. It's just straight up nasty. That's a Doom song. I don't care what anybody says.
It is up until, like, the very end where it gets into, like, a heavy metal gallop. Like, hey, we're kind of working our way out of the darkness a little bit. But no, the most of that song is just bleak. Really awesome isolated drum fills that kind of cue off the chorus on there. And, man, some of the darkest fucking tremolos that are on the album. Like, they just sound sinister and evil. And that is kind of the vibe on most of this, even in its more triumphant moments. The fact that there's this sort of, like, downtrodden sound to it, despite being just violent and fucking punchy. I don't know, like, it has a unique mood to it.
I think a lot of that comes with the vocals, too, like, because it's not all being barked at. Like, a lot of it, sometimes it's, like, pleading growls and screams, and, like, it's almost like he's like, please don't go in there, but go in there, but don't, but fuck you.
Ah, you're dead. Ah. It's great. I've been listening to All Out War for fucking years. For Those Who Were Crucified was my first exposure to that band. I've been a fan ever since. And there's just something about his more just kind of shrieked vocals. They're agonized. They're fucking just, you know, I don't know, something horrific about them. But at the same time, they have that hardcore energy to it. And they like to layer that stuff.
Yes.
And do backup vocals in here. In fact, Dylan Walker shows up on Chaos Master's Order to add some extra screams in there, too. But also, I think the rest of the band is doing backup vocals to layer it. And, you know, I mean, it's hardcore. You got to have some gang vocals. But, man, does it make it just fucking effective.
Right. I can count on one hand, maybe, the amount of times where it was either a single-tracked or a double-tracked vocal. Like, for the most time, it's gang vocals. It's the whole band yelling at you.
As far as negatives on here, I really don't have very many. It has a very tight runtime. I think it runs like a little bit over 36 minutes. Every song packs a punch. It also packs, again, melodies that I was not expecting. I like that little kind of surprise factor, especially, you know, given the pedigree of all of these guys. I mean, they definitely have, you know, a wide wheelhouse in terms of metal and extreme music. But I wasn't expecting, again, all that classic heavy metal and doom metal. My one real knock on here is the tracking itself. While it's awesome, it keeps that bullet train energy because a lot of these songs will just go. Like, there's barely a track break. You're going. And unfortunately, sometimes that, you know, lets the songs kind of run into one another. In fact, sometimes I didn't know we had actually jumped to a different track. But at the same time, that next track ended up supplying me with another batch of fucking riffs and fucking hooks that I like. So I was like, it's kind of a minor thing. But as much as the songs individually flow really well, like in terms of the transitions, in terms of the stylistic shifts in the riffs, that one thing kind of keeps it from flowing a little bit better.
I would have to really agree. I don't have very many gripes. In fact, that would be my gripe. So, and while the songs start abruptly and they kick the shit out of you all the time, in contrast, they also abruptly stop and consequently run into one another. There was probably at least 3 or 4 times where I was like, oh, okay, wait, hold on. What's happening? Oh, new song? Okay, shit, that was only a minute and a half. All right. And, like, I like a little bit of warning when things are going to end, just so I can, again, ramp myself up for the next thing. Because if you're bullet training the entire time and letting everything run into each other, why separate the tracks? That's really a very minor gripe, though, because really I don't have any beyond that. The production is mwah.
Yeah, no, the production on here is fucking amazing.
Yeah, because for all these things to come together stylistically and not to clash with one another, but to mesh well with one another, you have to have everything being heard. And all of these styles of music, death metal, thrash, blackened elements, hardcore, punk, whatever, they're all mixed perfectly to have all these individual moments stand out. So, in ending, I'm going to give this 4 stars. I thought this record kicked ass. There's not a dull moment on any of these songs. There's not a moment for it to go dull. Even when they add in those little bits of atmosphere at the end, they're so quick that it doesn't really matter. The record sounds dark, it sounds creepy, it's incredibly intense. I like the constant gang vocals. Like, normally I'm all about having little bits of isolation, but it's just the way that all these songs are presented. I like just being screamed at by the entire band. I was not expecting harmonies. I was not expecting such wonderful melodies. I was not expecting shredding guitar solos. And I was also, oddly enough, kind of expecting Adam Jarvis to go off, and he doesn't. He stays in the pocket, which in this case I really like. Outside of my minor gripes about ending abruptly, this record just whoops fucking ass. I would recommend totally going out and checking this out, especially if you're a fan of, say, All Pigs Must Die, Enforced, Power Trip, Anthrax, Obituary, Iron Maiden, the list goes on. This isn't one you want to miss. I would definitely recommend checking it out.
I am always wary when it comes down to supergroups because while there are definitely some awesome supergroups out there, there are definitely some that, well, the sum of the parts don't quite equal the whole. This is not one of them. This is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and also agree, 4 stars. This is a banger, flat out. There's not really any filler on here. The riffs are fucking tight. Again, I was not expecting so much melody on here, but it doesn't detract from the outright brutality and rage that is just encapsulated in this 36-minute fucking furious riff fest. If you're a big fan of hardcore, I think you'll like this, but those little doses of melody, like classic heavy metal and doom metal, they really add like a layer of depth to here. Me being a giant All Out War fan, hearing Mike fucking just growl and scream his guts out to something that isn't necessarily All Out War, like, he fits so well in here. Everyone does a fucking fantastic job on here. I think the lead work is exceptional. My only issue here was, how the tracks kind of run into each other because there's no big breaks between them. Occasionally you get some, but man, like, this is Bullet Train, and I get it. That's kind of a hardcore fucking thing, but that was it. Like, man, when this album dooms, it dooms hard. When the breakdowns hit, they're fucking ferocious. Again, if you like All Pigs Must Die, Power Trip, and I would even say if you're a big fan of, like, again, kind of doom metal, death doom. If you like your metalcore a little bit more on the sinister side too, I'd say Converge as well. Yeah. It's just vicious and nasty, and it makes you want to mosh, and yeah, they play every element in this really well. So yeah, definitely check this out. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Now, our site is currently under construction, but when that pops up, our Patreon link is there, first off. It's also on our channel someplace, but we will be loading it up with shirts. We just need to make the purchase and get the order here, and we will definitely do a video showing them off and probably give away one as another giveaway because, again, our giveaway ended. We have a lucky winner now, and we're at 15,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much for that because, Jesus, man, that's still insane.
Yep, that's quite the accomplishment. I never thought in a million years we'd be to where we are, and I never thought that we would keep growing at the rate that we keep growing, but it's happening, and it's all because of you guys. It's got actually very little to do with us anymore. We just get on here and talk about shit that we were going to talk about anyway. It's you guys that have made this such a much larger part of our lives than we expected it to be. So Thank you very much.
The YouTube metal community is fucking awesome.
Yep.
And we are forever in its dead. So once again, thank you all, and we will catch you later.